We need to invest in people in tech. I think VCs are fucking things up.
Maybe the CEO has turned it around, but they've done a fantastic job of everything that they do seems very people first.
The companies that say they're people first to their customers, but not to their employees, is not people first.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Hillens.
Let's see what's trending. Welcome back to another episode of GTM News Desk. We are so excited you're here. I'm Nick Bennett, and I have the amazing Mark Hillens with me. What's up, Mark? How you doing today?
I'm well. I'm a little hungry, so we'll get through this episode with my stomach growling a little bit. But that's okay. I'll make it through. No worries.
It's all good, though, because we're talking about everything people first today, and we have an amazing third guest. We are so excited once you get to segment 3. But before we do that, we have a couple of headline stories for you. And the first one, and Mark, I'm curious on your thoughts on this. So I have a Peloton. I've had a Peloton. I actually bought it during the pandemic. They were running some special. It was like 0% financing for like 3 years or something like that. So I paid like $80 a month for it. And I still have it. I pay the $40-something per month membership, and I haven't used it in months, mostly because of my injury. But CNBC, they just released their Q2 earnings report. And so when I was going through it, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It aligns to the story that we're talking about today, which is the people first mindset, how leadership must prioritize the member experience, or in our world, the customer experience. And so when I was going through this, and one of the things I loved about Peloton, if you think about it, Peloton isn't just a fitness brand. It's a community-driven experience. That was the one thing, like the pandemic taught me, like so many people turned to community, and like I loved riding 1 to 2 times a day, and like the people, the community, you got so hyped up about it. I was like, this is really cool. And I think members stay engaged because there was a shared accountability, there was the motivation, and there was the connection. This is a people first business model in action. So now going through this a little bit more, and like I talked about, when leadership must prioritize the member experience, it's about the member loyalty, not just the content and hardware. And if you think about it, Pelotons aren't cheap. Like I was looking at the Tread, which is their treadmill piece of it, and like it's almost $4,000 for a treadmill. You can get a treadmill for a lot cheaper. And you're not only buying the hardware, you also have to pay, $44 a month on the membership to get into it. And so when I think about the most successful community-driven brands, and this is more from a B2C lens, but like I think of Nike, I think of Apple, I think of Lululemon. Lululemon amazes me. I don't know if you get anything from there for your wife or whatever, but like I had to go there after Christmas and return a pair of yoga pants that my wife got. And like that store is busy every time. And I was so surprised how much a pair of yoga pants cost. And so when you think about these community-driven brands, they invest in making community customers feel like insiders. So the leadership amplifies member success stories. They celebrate the milestones. And that's why Peloton did such a great job. And fortunately, why they're coming back. I know they had a little bit of a fallout, I guess, towards the end of the pandemic. And, the CEO got replaced and all that stuff. But they are creating personalized experiences, and they're increasing direct engagement with customers. And if you think about this, from transactions to relationships, so the future of fitness isn't about subscriptions. And this is what Peloton talks about. It's about building lifelong relationships. And they want to focus on how people interact with the brand beyond workouts, whether it's in-person events, social integration. Like a lot of the Peloton instructors have like built mini communities. Like I know there was this, she's no longer at Peloton, but Kendall Toole, I think her name was, my wife like loved her. And one, because they both have the same first name, but two, like it was just like such a cult following. And everything that happened within Peloton, I think the next era of growth for them is really human-centered. Like they're doubling down on the people who made Peloton a movement in the first place. And I should have bought Peloton when it was low, but like my guess is that stock's going to continue to go up very well. I think people are going to get back on the Peloton train because maybe the CEO has turned it around, but they've done a fantastic job of everything that they do seems very people first, seems very leadership driven, and more about serving everyone else within the company. So that's what I got.
Interesting. Yeah, that was a lot. I'd say Peloton is in a very tough market, very competitive market. Think about it, right? Like there's so many ways you could work out. What they're trying to tap into, from what you kind of summarized there, is the human emotion side of it, the feelings, the memories. Have you ever taken a group fitness class, Nick?
I've never taken a group one in person. It's all been virtual.
You should do that because that's a whole different experience when you think about the virtual side versus the in-person group one. And Peloton is basically trying to replicate that. And it's hard to do. That's very hard to do. So yes, I think Peloton is in an interesting spot. They obviously got over their skis during the pandemic. Their stock price, I think it went down 95%. I think their business is still struggling. I think you have good points on how it could rebound. But at the same time, what we're getting at today with the conversation with Kate later, it's going to be around the idea of management and leadership. And what I think Peloton has failed to do is manage and lead their internal employees first. I don't know, maybe you read something that I didn't see in that story, but yes, you could try your best to create a culture of excellence and leadership in a community through your customers, through your members. But if your employees aren't believing in being treated well and have a circle of safety, if you will, around how they approach their work and how they do their work, and they don't feel like they can be bringing their best self to work each day, building that community, building that culture of excellence externally will be hard.
I agree. I think the big thing is like members, or I guess, customers or employees, however you want to look at it. I guess there's a couple different buckets, but they invest in leaders they believe in, not just the product. So I think that's one of the other key takeaways. And I think they did a good job. It fell off. I think they're picking back up in that area. And who knows if it will continue or not.
So segment 2, completely different kind of end of the spectrum here. We've talked about artificial intelligence during this show, obviously. We're going to talk about a different piece of artificial intelligence today, which is voice. And I did a lot of research on this leading up to this episode, and I found an interesting A16Z deep dive. It's in the show notes about the state of AI voice. And the reason I brought this one up for this episode, as you said, is very people first, is voice is extremely powerful. The small nuances in how you say something, your tone, your inflection, the actual strength of your voice, to how loud you can be, and what all that means as you communicate cannot be understated. So when you have now AI, and if you look at this, I'll pull out a few things here, creating human voices in the voice of a human, in the voice of Nick, with strong inflection and tone difference, we're on the cusp of something majorly different, changing, possibly significant things in the world of humanity, for good and bad, I think. So voice, at the end of the day, allows you to trust someone or not trust someone. And if you can't tell if there's a real person behind that voice, or if it can't be communicated to you up front, is this real or is this not real? I think you can get into some sketchy situations. You can also get into some really good situations where the person's voice is created for a good use case, which is fantastic. And it allows you to actually create better managers and leaders, because now you're going to use the power of voice to help train them and educate them and coach them on how to have better human-to-human interactions. So there's tons of consequences here, both good and bad. But A16Z, again, did this deep dive, Nick. And just in about 7 months, the way in which voice has been now able to be recreated in a synthetic type way. Like there's an image that you'll see in this teardown of like the infrastructure stack required to build a really strong voice experience 8-9 months ago to today. It's become more and more simplified, which means this power is soon going to be unleashed on anyone. Anyone will be able to use this, which then you open up like Pandora's box almost. So I think that's a pretty important newsworthy thing to talk about, given how overarching that could have from a net benefit or a net negative standpoint.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I didn't realize there was that much going down in like that space. I knew it from like there's like a tool called like HeyGen. I think it's called HeyGen or something, where it's getting pretty good using your voice as well as an image of you to make it look like you're talking. And I've seen some like side by sides, and it's getting harder to tell, like, is that real Nick or is that AI Nick? And I mean, with all this technology that's coming out and these investments and everything, I can only imagine it's going to get harder over the next, couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this, they have dozens of examples of companies, some at the seed stage, some at the Series B stage, but you have voice agents for healthcare, customer feedback agents. You have agents that are going to help you do better interviewing. Like it's just like we're on the tip of the iceberg here, right? And because it's going to become so much easier to build these agentic voice experiences and create these voices, it's going to change the world significantly, I think.
100%. I agree with you there. Well, let's jump over to segment 3. We've got an amazing guest, Kate. We'll jump in, see how it goes, and I guarantee I'm going to learn a ton, you're going to learn a ton, and we'll figure it out along the way.
Welcome to segment number 3. We got a fantastic guest for you all today. Kate, what is going on?
Hanging in. It's Friday. I'm pumped about that.
It is Friday. That is when we're recording this episode. It's the middle of winter if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. I love the snow. Nick hates the snow. Kate, do you like the snow?
I hate the snow. I moved south. I'm from New York. I live in Nashville. See ya. Snow.
Well, you and Nick will bond during this podcast then. This segment. Well, I and Nick are both extremely excited to talk to you because we value leadership a lot when it comes to people first go to market. We actually have this method we've created. It's 7 different parts. Like the cornerstone of how you should create a people first go to market type strategy for your business, Kate, is leadership. Leadership sets the tone. Leadership ultimately doesn't create the culture. They enable the culture. They support the culture. So I want to dig into all of that with you today. Nick and I'm sure are going to learn a few things about each other during this conversation. Why don't you just give everyone a quick background on who you are? And we were just talking about DISC. Just give everyone a quick insight into like DISC and these other terms that are related to like the conversation today, the personality type stuff we'll talk about, people first leadership. I'm a huge serve people first type leader. So intro, but then I want you to get into like a little bit more about you as a leader, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I have to say, I've been following you forever. So both of you, and I love what you're doing. And yeah, admire you in the B2B marketing world. I've been in it for 15 years. I identify as a B2B marketer, even though I'm an entrepreneur and a CEO now. I am first a marketer. So I really, really appreciate getting to know you guys and talk here today. The terms we'll use today, servant leadership, I think is one. We'll talk about performance. We'll talk about employee engagement, which like, what does that mean? It's different for everyone. And then DISC. So DISC is a work style assessment that measures your communication style. And that sounds like, how do you measure a style? That sounds kind of crazy, but there are patterns in the way that we communicate. And DISC is a framework for how to categorize those styles. It is not science-based. It was invented over 100 years ago now. And the only reason, like, it still sticks around because when people take the assessment, they say, that is me. I feel seen, to use a very millennial term, I feel seen. And so that's why it sticks around. I have a love-hate relationship with these assessments because the whole hypothesis behind Opre is that Mark is Mark, and Nick is Nick, and Kate is Kate. And we're not snowflakes, we're diamonds. That's what I usually try to say.
I like that.
Like everyone's got their own ways of communicating, and that the environment around us really impacts us. And these assessments don't account for that, right? They don't account for, who am I talking to? Am I talking to my manager, my peers, my direct reports? They don't account for the culture in the organization, how things get done, the power dynamics at play. They don't account for how I'm feeling that day. Like the things that impact us every day, those assessments don't do. And so they need to be merged with other information, kind of like the things we talked about, to be able to understand, how is Mark going to react in a situation like this? How do I give Nick hard feedback today? How do I use AI to understand the context of what's happening so that I can continuously build the best relationship with each one of you, to lead you, right? To motivate you, to engage you, to serve you in this thing called work, which impacts our lives so much. I think everyone I talk to says, they try to have good boundaries, or work-life integration, or work-life balance, or whatever. The key thing there is life, right? This is impacting your lives so much. So we should do it well. And the stress, 99% of the stress is not the work. It's all the stuff that happens around the work, which is the people.
Before Nick asks the first question, I'll just call out, as all three of us probably know, management and leadership is a hard job. So as we talk about, and as you listen to this conversation today, folks, what we're trying to hopefully convey and teach and get you to think about is how can I make, if you're a manager, if you're a leader, my job a bit easier, but ultimately your job is to make, to Kate's point, the people you are here to serve and guide and lead's jobs easier and better. So more enjoyable, maybe at the end of the day, right? So just want to frame it, and then Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited for this. I feel like, something I struggle with is definitely conversation at times. So I'm excited to learn more personally. But one of the things that I talk to a lot of people about is, what is people first? Like, it's one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot. Like, and if you ask 10 different people, you'll probably get 10 different answers. But Kate, for you, what does it actually mean when it comes to go to market? And how do you make it more than just a nice idea?
I think about people first in two ways. You have your people internal and you have your people external, right? And people first should, in my opinion, incorporate both of those. The companies that say they're people first to their customers but not to their employees is not people first. Even if you're doing both, I think we vastly underestimate the work necessary for our internal folks, and we expect, right, the outcome to be people first towards our customers, and really it all starts with your employees and your teams. And snaps.
Preach.
That's the thing. In my last role as a VP of a venture-backed Series B startup, I spent 98% of my time on the internal relationships necessary to do that job. And maybe that's wrong. I don't know. I felt like we had a lot of success there. We did some great things together, and it was a really great proportion of how to spend your time when you're in the head of marketing seat. I think it means a lot more employee first as people first, to go to market together, right, as a group, whether it's your marketing team, how your teams are working together, right, your relationship with your peers, I dare bring up the sales and marketing alignment question, right? It's not a question, it's a necessity, and that's the investment in those relationships is number one.
So how do you create people first managers and leaders? That's what we're going to dig into now.
I think this is the biggest problem affecting tech in particular today.
Hot take.
But
I think it's an accurate take.
If you go look at insurance or farming, or like all these industries that I'm now learning about being in this seat, they've got some amazing managers. Amazing. And while maybe my view is biased or inaccurate or whatever, they're outpacing the number of amazing people leaders that I meet in tech. And maybe that's it looks to tech to solve problems when we got to look to the people to solve problems first.
Amen.
Yeah, I think maybe we need to have a serious look in the mirror about the importance of this.
We need to invest in people in tech. Like, I think I think VCs are fucking things up. If you're a VC listening to this, come at me on LinkedIn and prove me wrong. Show me the data and show me people who say, no, you are investing in my growth, in my career. I was fortunate to be part of a company that did that, HubSpot. I've yet to see a company, and I've advised and worked at other companies, and we've worked with 35 companies. I mean, some of these are great companies. I've yet to see a company invest at the level that HubSpot did, and I think it was enough. It was like just the right amount, but I mean, that was a massive investment in how they thought about people. I remember doing Disc at HubSpot, Kate, in 2012. And we used that since I was there for another 6 years, all the time. I had my whole team plotted on Disc. I got enabled on Disc. We did, it was, and I've never seen that at any other company since that tech company.
That's absolutely it. And it seems expensive, but in reality, when you look at employee retention, regretted attrition, right? The employees that quit that we don't want to quit or whatever. When we look at employee engagement and performance, oh my gosh, this system is broken. I think VCs caused it by saying the companies that I've worked for where they took funding and the VC was in those board meetings right away saying, spend that money because we don't make money unless you get rid of that money. And that is, you went and hired people. You hired people by gut feel rather than a strategy. And you literally didn't train or come up with a system of what should managers at these companies do? What are the values that these managers need to exhibit consistently over time to deliver on the go-to-market strategy, on the whole strategy of the company? I can't be too harsh on the VCs, but I can see the system. And actually, I will say, I think that they are coming to this reality, right? The gravy train has stopped. 2021, 22, LPs, they got to return this money to LPs, right? The whole ecosystem is changing, and this is the core of it.
You both have led marketing teams, and I'm curious, you talked about some things, but how do you actually, walk the walk and talk the talk, like as far as investing in the people? Because when you think about it, I agree with everything that you both just said, but how do you connect better leadership to stronger go-to-market results? And Kate, I'll start with you, and then Mark, I'm curious on your thoughts there as well.
I'm really interested. I mean, Mark's done it at a much bigger pace than I have. I'll tell you my story. I remember getting promoted into management. We had a layoff and they kept me, and I was running product marketing at the time, and they said, you're going to also run demand gen and you're going to be a manager. I was like, okay. I remember being
Good luck.
Do I have a choice? And the response was like, if you want a job, no. It's like, okay, got it. No training, no nothing. No, you should have one-on-ones. No, nothing. And honestly, I got to a company that actually believed in it. The CEO came from not tech and set the example for what you do. So I was brought into a manager cohort. In the life of the company, there were only 2 cohorts. The first was all the managers we had, and the second was when we had hired so many new managers, we needed to do it again. So you have this cohort of managers that learn the same things. They learn the values. They learn what a disc is. They do these things together. They create this space for them to talk about the problems they're having, the things they don't know, right? All that good stuff. And then when I got promoted into, a VP of marketing role, I got an executive coach. That was life-changing, truly life-changing, very expensive. I think that's where it becomes a little bit cost prohibitive for everyone to do, right? But wow. And the impact, right, that we had was 100 times better. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but in that probably 6-month period of starting to work with an executive coach, we grew pipeline 2.5 times on the same budget. We grew the company 2.5 times, right? The double, triple, we were crushing that. And I don't want to, it's the whole company thing, but you have these moments that, you're kind of trudging along and it's hard. And then you have these big growth moments. And that was one for me. And I think became one for the company as well. So anyway, I said it starts with the CEO, and then it starts with a systematic approach to this in the company.
Yeah, it's you have to be very intentional. This shit doesn't just happen. Like, good performance does not just happen. And I think a lot of people, not just in tech, think that just happens. You hire the right people, they're going to perform well. No, that is not usually the case. Like, less than 2% of the time, that's going to be the case. So you need to be intentional. You need to, Kate, you brought it up. You need to understand and have a process to hire the right people. Starts with that. Secondly, you need to have a very strong company onboarding experience. Third, you need to have a strong team enroll onboarding experience. Fourth, you need to have a strong ongoing employee enablement experience, depending for each different department and as a company. Fifth, you need to have management training for the manager level. Sixth, you need to have leadership training if your company's big enough at that level. What am I at, seventh or eighth? Where am I at right now? You need to have an experience that allows you to get outside perspective. So I will say the second best company that I've seen that has done this is Drift. David and Elias came from HubSpot. I'm good friends with them. Both of them, David and Elias, value the importance of this to the extreme, just like Brian and Dharmesh still do. And they paid for all their VPs and above to have coaches. They paid for it. Okay? So, like, I could keep going on, but, like, it is about first believing in it. These leaders have to believe that this is important and necessary. So if you don't believe in it and then you do it, it's going to be a waste of your fucking time and money. I'm sorry. I'm just really passionate about this, so that's why I'm swearing. And then secondly, you have to consistently invest in it for years, not just for 6 months. That's the only thing that people get wrong. So yes, there is major positives to doing this, but it is not something that you can do like a marketing campaign for 6 months and expect it just to take hold.
That's it. I completely agree with you. The belief, right? The belief in your instance, it started with the CEOs, right? Or the founders or whatever. And it was consistent throughout the life of the company. And that's it. And I do think there's two things that people in tech get wrong, or like maybe they just don't know, is one, that belief usually comes when you've seen it done well someplace else, right? Mark, you're probably the best example of that. You see it. If you hadn't had those experiences, you probably have the sneaking suspicion, but you're not sure,
Yep.
Right? You got to see it done well. Anyone who's looking for their next job, that's the number one question in my book of, whether or not I want to go to a company. That would be my number one question is like, what are you doing to invest in leaders?
That is the biggest takeaway we can have in this entire episode. Then we'll go to the exclusive content because we're going to stop here and go to the exclusive content. We'll go unpack like all the frameworks and ideas and examples. Kate, like, you just nailed it. Like, that might be the best thing we've had on like the show to date, which is if you want to understand if you're joining a good company, ask deeply. Not just the people you're interviewing with, but like people who are at the company, left the company. How do they invest in their employees?
That's it. Yeah. The number two thing before we get into the very exciting frameworks and how you do all this stuff is when you talk to really high-end recruiters that most people early in their career don't even know exist, right? Those recruiters have very specific strategies. That is their IP for finding the right people to get into the right roles. And when you talk to CEOs, right, or even chief people officers, head of talent acquisition, whatever, they don't talk about it because it's their secret. And that is the secret. That's the secret sauce behind the whole company, the whole thing. And so there's this like echo chamber where it's not getting talked about. So people don't realize the importance of it when actually it's so important that no one wants to talk about it because they don't want to give away the secret sauce.
Which is the stupidest thing because the HubSpot did give away the secret sauce, and you might have seen this, Kate and Nick, called the culture code.
Yes. Read it.
Well, I think it's a mic drop from both sides. I think it's time to head over to the exclusive. You can find it on TACinsider.com. We will see you there, and we are going to unpack everything that we just talked about with Kate and Mark and myself. See you there.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk presented by TAC Insider. To dive into the exclusive content with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to TAC Insider. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.